Welcome back. I am your host, Teddy Lim from John L. Scott Real Estate here in Seattle. We are now in the keys section of our Money House Keys method of buying a house in our crazy real estate market here. Um, Remember, when we started this class, our goal is to really lay the law of the land for you, give you an eagle's eye view where you could actually see the entire chessboard, so to speak, and see all the moving pieces so you'd actually be more prepared and decrease your anxiety, lower the frustrations that you may have, or maybe even the overwhelm. And we are more than halfway through our class now. And actually, what we want to go over is the key section. So let's dive right in. So in real estate, we like to say that a house needs to sell 3 times before you can actually get the keys, or before a buyer could actually end up moving into the house and getting the keys. So the first time that a house needs to sell is when a buyer actually goes out and looks at the property, whether it's through online and or in person, and actually is compelled enough to write up an offer for that house. So that's the first step. The second time it has to sell is through an inspector, which we actually went over in our house section. So it needs to pass inspection, or the buyers need to be able to accept the condition that it's in, regardless of what that could be, and so that way they can move forward into the purchase of the property. The third and final step of when a house needs to sell is through the appraisal and underwriting process. Okay, and I'll show you guys why that is important. So, appraisal, okay, it's kind of hard to see because of all the lights, but hopefully you could see that well enough. So the appraisal process is the part of the loan underwriting process where an appraiser goes out and inspects the property, inspects the condition, inspects the features of the house visually. And the reason why we call it an appraisal is because an appraisal is an opinion of worth. And an opinion of worth or value, it's really it's a very subjective topic, and it all comes down to whoever is appraising the property that will determine what its value is worth. So now you might be asking, okay, well, there has to be some sort of frame of reference of what of how a house's value is determined, right, Teddy? Well, that is correct. And so what inspectors end up doing is, I'm sorry, appraisers end up doing is that they take a look at the most recent sales and compare it side by side with all the features, all of the benefits, all of the conditions, all the location features, the amenities throughout the entire neighborhood, and compare it side by side with the closest comparable home that just sold. Now, they have different criteria for this. It could be anywhere from a quarter mile to half a mile to a mile, sometimes more, depending on how difficult it is to find comparable properties for that house. The other thing is obviously the numbers of bedrooms and bathrooms, the size of the livable square footage inside the home, the lot size as well. I mean, that could also determine what a house's value is, and among other things, topography and obviously features of the surrounding environment of that property. Okay, so why is that important, you ask? Well, it's important because a bank will only loan Okay, okay, okay. Okay, so Teddy, you're probably asking, why is that important? Okay, well, that is important because a bank will only loan up to the amount that a house appraises for. Okay, so what do you mean? What do you mean, Teddy? Just spill the beans. So, in the market that we're in, where there are more buyers than there are actually homes to buy, a house potentially, let's say, house here, and let's just say Renton, Washington, where we're located. A seller could be asking $600,000 for that house, okay? But because it's received multiple offers, they could end up agreeing to accepting an offer from a buyer that offers $650,000, okay? So asking price for a home is usually dictated by the most recent sales in the neighborhood of a house. And it is what a real estate agent would determine as fair market value or fair asking price. All right. Now, what ends up happening when a listing receives more than 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5 or more offers, some buyers could come in and offer a much higher price for it, because obviously they love the house that much. They could see themselves living in that house so much. And so what ends up happening is, let's say for example, an appraiser goes out, inspects the property, and appraises the house for, let's say, $625, establishes a value of worth. His or her opinion is that it is worth $625,000. Okay? When we put in an offer, and if a buyer decides to apply what is called the appraisal contingency on that property, there's 4 things that could happen. Okay? One is because a lender will only finance up to $625,000 on the house, the buyer could just easily walk away and say, well, you know what? We're about $25,000 away. I'm just going to walk away. If they use the appraisal contingency and financing contingency on their offer, they could walk away and get their earnest money back. Okay, that's one. The second thing that could happen is that the seller could agree to lower their mutually agreed sales price to $625,000. Okay, wouldn't that be nice, right? Seller agrees. We'll just move forward and we'll sell you the house for $625,000. Great, everybody's happy. Buyer and seller happy. Okay. The third alternative, or the third situation that can happen is the buyer could go ahead and add the $25,000 difference on their offer price and their appraised price. Okay. Well, you would say, why would a buyer do that? Well, because most of the time what ends up happening, if a house is presented well, it presents well, there isn't enough inventory, there's a shortage of inventory, or there is a surplus of buyers out there, what's going to happen is more than likely you're going to have that seller's going to have a buyer waiting on the wings that will be more than happy to pay for the house for this price. And so a situation that can happen is when a buyer simply just makes up for the difference of the appraised price and their offer price. Okay? And to be realistic, this actually happens quite a lot in our market right now. And if I'm even being more honest and prepare you for the reality of our market, what actually ends up happening is a lot of these terms actually get negotiated before a seller even accepts an offer, right? There are buyers out there who are able or are willing to actually put more money down on a house right up front, and they disclose this to the seller because they want to show how serious they are. Okay, and we'll get into the bonus section. I'm kind of alluding to this, but another contingency that we like to use right now is called the 22 AD, or the 22 additional down payment contingency for our buyers. And I'll tell you why this is such a powerful tool that we use in order to package your offer and get it accepted. Okay, so third option is that the buyer adds additional down payment. Okay, now the last situation that would happen is that both buyer and seller meet somewhere in the middle. In this situation actually still does happen because it's not rare to happen where a house could actually end up receiving quite a substantial amount above their asking price, that it only appraises up to a certain level above that. So what do I mean by that? Let's say for some weird reason, a listing agent completely misses the mark on how much a house is worth, or I should say, an appraiser appraises a property for so much below what the mutually agreed price is. Okay, let's say for example this same $650,000 house, $600,000 house that's being listed on the market. This is the asking price, $600,000. Let's say they end up somewhere, instead of 650, they end up receiving an offer for 750,000. Okay, which is $150,000 more than their asking price. Okay, let's say the area is really strong and that they could actually command for a higher price, and the appraiser comes in and appraises the house for, let's say, 700,000. Right? They end up appraising at 700,000. Well, that is $100,000 more than the asking price, and it could be way more than what the buyer had prepared to or agreed to putting down as an additional down payment, should there be a gap between the mutually agreed price and the appraised price. And so there's still about there's still about $50,000 away from getting the financing amount that they need in order to move forward and close the sale. Okay, that's quite a lot, so I'm going to break it down again. Let's say this same house asking price is on the market for $600,000. They receive multiple offers. They end up at $750,000, which is $150,000 over their asking price. An appraiser comes in and appraises the property at $700,000. Okay, so the difference between the appraised price and their agreed sales price is $50,000. Okay, $50,000. Situation number 4 is what happens when both buyer and seller agree to meet somewhere in the middle. So it could be anywhere in between $701,000 and $750,000 to move forward on a price. Okay, so rewind this video back, so that way, if it's not making sense, you could rewind it and study it again. But this appraisal contingency is a very important aspect of moving forward and closing on a sale. Okay, and matter of fact, this is what we do really well. Okay, negotiating between what the price that we put an offer on, we agreed on, and the appraisal is bridging that gap. You know, this is why a lot of our clients really recommend us, is because we do a really good job of finding agreement that works out for both parties. And most of the time, we actually end up negotiating for our buyers, and actually giving them better terms than what they originally started and what we originally offered for. So that's one of the very important aspects. Okay, appraisal and underwriting. All right, so we are at the 16-minute mark. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pause, and I'm gonna before I go over the title and escrow section and the closing and possession section, give you guys some time to gather your thoughts, prepare your questions, add a comment, and do all of that stuff. All right, so we'll see you in the next video, and talk soon. Cheers.